If you were with us last week, you know that we began to talk about the subject of transformational love. The reason that this topic is so significant is because on our own, we all are going to practice self-love. That's what Adam and Eve brought into this world, was that desire to please self. And so left to our own doing, we will default to loving ourselves ahead of anything or anyone else. All of us have this as our default setting, and we have no intuitive power to do otherwise. In other words, this is just where we're stuck. So our hope has to be that we can learn something different, and that's what we talked about last time, that we are capable of learning a different kind of love, a transforming love that is commanded for us to practice. We talked about three things last week that will help us get ready to practice transformational love, and the first is to stop living in fear, to step outside of the control and the comfort that our fear oftentimes offers us, and to say, I'm ready to do something different. I'm going to transform myself. To also recognize that it starts with us. It would be nice if everybody in the world would straighten up so that my life would be better. But the reality is, there's only one person I can make straighten up, and that's me. But that's still how my world gets better. When it starts with me, then my world improves. And then we also talked about the fact that transformational love in the very beginning stage depends upon our willingness to submit and to practice submission. So that's what we looked at last time. I want to share this text with you in Mark chapter 12. Of all the commandments, which is the most important, Jesus is asked. The most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. When Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He responded that it's loving God. But not just some kind of mythological love or warm fuzzy love. He gave the specifics of it. It's a love that is one that is with all of our heart, literally all of our thoughts and all of our feelings focus in on God. That's how we are to love God, with all of our heart, with all of our soul, every breath. That Greek word means the breath that God breathed into man and became a living soul. We're to love God with every breath that we have. We also are to love Him with our mind, the seat of our deepest thoughts, our disposition, our person. We are to love God with all of our mind. All the energies which by nature go into self-love, our heart, our soul, and our mind are to be transformed and become the apparatus for us loving God. In other words, by our default setting, all of those things set themselves to serve us. I want to love myself with all my heart. I want to love myself with every breath I take. But when I began to practice transformational love, I realized that becomes the apparatus that I have to use to love God. That is what Jesus identifies as the greatest, the foremost in time, place, and order command. The greatest command, the thing that takes paramount over everything else in order and place and importance, is to love God. But then Jesus identifies the second, and he wasn't asked that. So I wonder why. Why does Jesus volunteer the second command? The word that is used here for second means by comparison or in rank. So what Jesus probably did here was he shared the greatest command, but then he needed for these people to realize that there's only one thing that comes underneath of that that's of any significance and any importance, and that is that you love your neighbor as yourself. That's the second greatest command. He said it's fulfilled when one loves others as themselves. It's interesting in the Greek construction of that verse, it's in the genitive case in the original Greek language, which merely means it's a possession. That's oversimplified. But the idea is that, that we are to love our neighbor, and that is to be, if you will, our possession. We're to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. The text illustrates how closely Jesus connected the human responsibility to love God and his fellow human beings. It actually establishes that one must have a love for God prior to his ability to love others. That's how that all shakes out. The greatest commandment is you love God, but before we are capable of loving others, we have to fully know the love of God. John makes that very plain in his letter in 1 John, that we can't say that we love our neighbor whom we've seen when we aren't loving, or can't say that we love God whom we haven't seen if we're not loving our neighbor whom we have seen. So there's that love triangle, if you will. But the only way that we are capable of understanding what it means to love our neighbor is to love God. So that has to be the place of beginning. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. This is how we've come to understand and experience love. Christ sacrificed his life for us. This is why we ought to live sacrificially for fellow believers and not just be out for ourselves, is how the Message renders that text in verse 16. When one fully comprehends and experiences the love of God, his transforming love becomes the motivation to fulfill the command to practice transforming love to others. In other words, I'm not going to be capable of loving anybody else until I transform my life with the love of God. Until God's love infiltrates me, I won't have the ability to love other people. So if I'm lacking in the ability to love others, guess where the solution begins? In connecting myself with God in a more powerful way, by transforming my life with the love of God. So once we've stopped living in fear, started to alter ourselves, and harnessed our ego with willing submission, we are then prepared to learn about this divine love. Why? So we can imitate it, and so that we can know the love of God. That's what I want us to focus on this morning. I want to share 5 different things that I think will help us to realize that God loves us, that will help us understand what it means to be in love with God. And the first one is very obvious. You've heard it before, but it's worth mentioning every time. And that is, we need to learn how to count our blessings. If we want evidence that God loves us, if we want a connection with transforming love, all we have to do is to count our blessings. Like the nightly news, it's really easy for us to thrive on what's wrong and negative in the world. Have you ever gotten just tired of listening to the news? I mean, because it's always negative. There was actually a newspaper several years ago that attempted to print only positive news. They went bankrupt because people don't want to read that kind of stuff. But it's all so negative. And if we're not careful, because of all that is negative around us, our world gets very negative. Such negative focus quickly drowns out our ability to see and enjoy the blessings that God provides. When our world becomes negative, our focus becomes so narrow that we fail to count our blessings, that we don't see the things that God has given us. Do you know that negativity is a constant influence in your life and mine? Let me share with you some interesting, I think, statistics about negativity. According to this gentleman, 77% of everything we think is negative and counterproductive and works against us. 77%. Wow. How about this? People who grow up in an average household hear no or are told that they can't do, or what they can't do, more than 148,000 times by the time they reach age 18. Some of us were told no more often than that. And Scott, some of us should have been told no more often than that. I won't say which was which there, but I just saw the smirk on your face, so I had to comment. And how about this? A 3-year study was done in one of America's largest cities to test their school system. And they found that in that school system, 75% of what teachers gave to students was negative. Negativity is all around us. Do you think we're programmed for negativity? Yeah. And just like transforming love has to be learned, we have to learn to count our blessings, don't we? Because of this great negativity. So as we step into the spiritual realm of God's transforming love, we come face to face with our need to reprogram ourselves. We must before we can exhibit God's love to others. James says this, every good thing and every perfect gift is from where? Is from above. Folks, there is nothing in your life that is good that doesn't come down from God. Nothing. Every blessing that you and I have is a gift from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. God doesn't have a double standard. God blesses people. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. God provides blessings in the exercise of His will. He brought us forth by the word of truth so that we would be a kind of first fruits among His creatures. Do you see how much God loves you? He loves you so much that He wants to make you the proof of what He's planted in this world. You are the first fruit of His creation, of His creatures. We look at that in the New Living, it puts it this way. Whatever is good and perfect comes down to us from God, our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. He chose to give birth to us by giving us His true word, and we, out of all creation, become His prized possession. I like the way that worded the last phrase. We are the prized possession of God. That's why He gives us such blessings. That's why He sends those down to us. Of all the days. Good thing to practice. Secondly, if you want to know how much God loves you, you can see others love us because of His love in them. In other words, God's love becomes evidence to us because there are people who have God's love in them who love us with that love. Who is it that gives you that kind of unconditional love and acceptance? That you have no worries about ever saying anything wrong because you're just accepted, you're just okay. That even if emotions are stirred, they're quickly settled because everything is okay. The love of God is being extended to you. When that happens, you are the object of godly love. You are receiving God's love through somebody else.